Because if you don't know why you failed, you won't know what to do in order to restudy and pass the exam. Hey guys, what's up? So I made some videos on this channel talking about what I think you should do after you fail the CPA exams. However, I realized that I never told you guys exactly what I did to pass the CPA exams after I failed. And just as a background, I failed 5 exams, 1 FAR exam, and 4 audit exams. So I'm going to be speaking from the perspective of how I passed in regards to those sections, but I'm pretty sure if you failed the other sections, you can probably apply what I'm going to say in this video to the other sections as well. So the first thing that I did was that I accepted failure. And after I had opened up my score report and seen that I had failed, I had to basically just say, you know what, I failed this exam, I'm gonna have to retake it. It is what it is. A lot of people fail the exams. I did read somewhere that only 10% of CPA candidates pass all 4 sections of the exams on their first try. The first couple of exams that I failed was very, very heartbreaking, because usually in school you study for a test and you don't necessarily fail or pass it, but you get a good grade. The CPA exams is very different than any other exam in school or just any other exam in general. It is a standardized accounting exam, and the reality is that you are more likely to fail an exam than to pass all of them on the first try. If you do pass all 4 sections on the first try, high five to you, you are amazing, but most people don't. So accepting that I failed was the first hurdle that I had to get through. And then after I accepted that I failed, so I would take about 2 or 3 days off after I found out that I failed, and I would just do something fun. I would just hang out with my friends, I would go out to dinner with my family, just do something relaxing to get my mind off of failing and the exams. And the reason I did this was because I was able to reset my mind, and my mind was cleared and fresh to start studying again. So I did not wait to find out what my score was after I failed a section before I moved on to another section. And so by the time that I found out that I had failed audit or FAR, I had already started studying for another section. And even then I would still take a couple days off from whatever section I was currently studying. Now, the third thing after you have accepted that you failed and that you took a few days off is to ask yourself why you failed. And this is a very, very important thing to ask yourself, because if you don't know why you failed, you won't know what to do in order to restudy and pass the exam. For me, the reason why I failed exams was not necessarily that I didn't study enough or that I didn't practice enough multiple choice questions or simulations, but a lot of times it was just because I didn't know some of the holes that the AICPA threw at me on the exam. And what I mean by that is that the AICPA, they know what candidates are good at and not good at. They know what questions are easy and hard. And so sometimes they're just gonna throw at you what you're not good at. And to be honest, I think that some of the audit exams that I failed, it was just purely unlucky for me, because I did score 373s, and so I was only 2 points away from passing 3 times. And I feel like if I just studied a little bit more of maybe the ethics section or knew a little bit more of the substantive testing section, I probably would have been able to get that 75 and pass the exam. But it is what it is, and as much as I was devastated that I was so close to passing and I would have to retake the exam, I was also kind of happy that my score wasn't very far from the cutoff, because I think if my score was very far from the cutoff, that would have been even more discouraging. The fact that I was very, very close meant that if I just kept restudying and kept retaking the exams, no matter how many times I had to do it, I would eventually pass. The next thing that I did was that I gave myself half of the time that it took me to study for the exam to restudy for the exam. So like I said before, I did not wait to find out my score before moving on to another section. So after I took the section that I was currently studying, I would go back and restudy the audit section or the FAR section that I failed. And for FAR, it took me 3 months to go through all of the material the first time around, and I scored a 65 on FAR. And so when I restudied for FAR, I gave myself a month and a half to restudy, and I ended up passing that exam on my second try with a 79. With audit, I gave myself about 2 months to study for my first audit exam, and when I found out that I failed that, I gave myself about a month to restudy for audit. And for me, giving myself half the amount of time that it took to study the exam first time around worked really well for me. I'm not sure if that's going to work really well for everyone, but personally for me, that worked really well, and that was a good amount of time for me to go through all of the material but not too much time where I feel like I was just overstudying. The next thing that I did was that I went over all of the material on the exam. So when I restudied for FAR, I went through all of the FAR material. When I restudied for audit, I went through all of the audit material. A lot of people will say for you to only kind of focus on your weak areas. I don't necessarily agree with that, because I think by the time I retook FAR and by the time I retook audit, I felt like I had forgotten a lot of the material that I was good at on those exams. So I studied all of the material, the topics that I was good at and the topics that I was weaker in. But I really suggest you go through everything and not just study the areas that you were weaker at. The next thing that I want to tell you, and this isn't really like a study tip or anything, but I just want to let you guys know that sometimes failing is unlucky. So like I said before, I scored 373s on my audit exams. And I think that with those exams, it was probably like the curve that held me behind, or it was just that they threw more information at me that I wasn't good at than information that I was good at. I did eventually end up passing audit with an 81. So if you have to retake an exam, don't be discouraged, because maybe the exam that you failed just had more information that you were weaker in. And then on your next exam, they might throw at you more information that you're good at and you could pass it. Or with the AICPA scoring curve and everything, maybe you'll benefit from the curve and it'll push you to pass that next round. The last thing I want to leave you with, and I did make a video talking about this last year, I think about a year ago, but that is to change your mindset. Now, I mentioned in that video that on my first exam, which was FAR, I had this mindset that I needed to pass the exam. And I feel like I went through all the little details in the FAR material, even if it wasn't highly tested. And I don't recommend you do that, because FAR has a lot of information on it. And from my personal experience, they did not throw at me anything that was not highly tested. So anything that your review material says that is highly tested, definitely focus more time on that. Anything that they say is not highly tested, you could probably just skip over that. But after that first FAR exam, I left knowing for sure that I failed it. I ended up scoring a 65. And with every other exam after that first FAR exam, I did not go in with the mindset that I needed to pass the exam. I went into the exam thinking, you know what, I'm just going to answer the questions and do the best I can with the information that I studied, and then we'll just see what happens. I was not worried about passing, because with that first FAR exam, I was so set on the fact that I needed to pass the exam. It actually caused me to not perform as well as I needed to. I was not worried at all with the other sections of the exams after I had changed my mindset. So having a change in mindset could mean everything, not just with passing the CPA exams, but with everything in general. If you're going in for an interview and you're all nervous and uptight, you're obviously not going to do as well than if you're relaxed. And just treat it as if you're having a conversation with another person. Same thing as if you're going in for a competition. You're not going to do as well if you're nervous and uptight and keep thinking about how you have to win. But if you just think to yourself, I'm just going to do the best I can and then see what happens, then you're going to do so much better. You might even win the competition or get the job offer in the example of the interview. All right, guys, that is it for this video. I hope it helps you. This is just personally what I did to pass the CPA exams after I had failed them. And I know that everyone's study techniques, everyone's brain works differently. But after some studying and some failed attempts at the exams, you'll figure out what works for you. I wish you the best of luck. I hope you subscribe, turn on the notification, and leave me a comment letting me know where you are in your CPA journey. And I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.